Greetings and welcome to this 31st of August 2024, still the third decade of the 21st century. If for some reason you're new to my channel and you have no idea why I just said that, it's because I'm trying to draw attention to the fact that it is still indeed the third decade of the 21st century, to sort of juxtapose that against where people had predicted us being and where we're at and what we're talking about and what we're dealing with as a society. The other thing I like to do is, if you take the time to not only watch and or listen to my videos, but leave a comment, I like to read, react, and respond to them out loud. I don't edit them. I don't clean them up typically, so if there's spelling errors or grammatical errors and it sounds chopped up or wonky, that's how you wrote it, so it is what it is. But I like to give credit where credit is due, because what I'm really trying to do is foster communication. And before I get into the read, react, and respond, I'll give you an idea as to why. A couple of things real quick. I recently left my old job that I'd done for just under 8 years, and I started a brand new position. The brand new position has different requirements, different responsibilities, and in order to comply with certain ethics and the Hatch Act, if I'm currently on the clock or physically working that day, I consider myself on duty and therefore won't make any content that particular day, which as of right now is going to be Monday through Friday, so that's why I'm coming to you on a Saturday. The other thing too is I've been somewhat inundated recently on various forms of social media with friends, family members, or both, making comments to the effect of how I will disown you, unfriend you, purge you from my life if we disagree. And that's basically the short of it. If you say something derogatory, which means therefore I disagree, then I'm going to purge you from my life because of this, that, or the other. And I just found it kind of fascinating, because I was listening to something else and the person made a point that made a whole lot of sense. It's a religion. If you believe so firmly in these concepts and these thoughts and these ideas, belief goes hand in hand with faith. Faith is religion. So if you have faith and belief in these concepts, that's like being a religious fanatic. You just have a different form of religion. It's socio-political in nature. And it just kind of blew my mind that I was like, wow, you know, these things are that near and dear. So like, if you're a Methodist, you absolutely hate Lutherans and Episcopalians and evangelicals and Catholics. And it's like, wow, that's really, really myopic and very, very sad. And just, if that's the case, you know, roger that, you be you. Unfriend me. Fuck if I care. My friends list is full. If we're family by some nature and you don't want to be anymore, bye Felicia, I'm good. Literally, I have my wife and my kids. I'm good. I'm good. So, with that being said, I just found it funny, you know, like, whether it's LBGTQIA+, which, again, I don't understand all of that, or like abortion, like, you know, don't fuck with my body, no uterus, no opinion, you know, and I'm like, well, what are we actually arguing for here? I mean, what really are we actually arguing for? Are we actually arguing for government-funded abortion? Because if you are, ask the Native Americans how that worked out for them. The moment you let the government get involved, then the government gets to make decisions on your behalf. If that's what you want, so be it. I'm just saying. Me personally, I don't know that I want to donate my tax money to that sort of thing. However, on the flip side, I've met people. And if you're like me and you've met people, there's a lot of people I've come to the conclusion that the sum total of your decisions, I don't know that we need more of you. I don't even know that we need you. Perhaps maybe you could have been swallowed or you could have been aborted. I'm sorry if that's vulgar, but it is what it is. I've met people and some people have utterly squandered the gift of life. So, I don't know. It's just one of those where I'm like, I really don't know where to go with this one. So, with that being said, I've got a lot to get through, because Andra, you're never at a loss for words. If I am your therapy, then so be it. Cool. If I help you get through stuff, cool. Then I'm doing something. I'm serving a purpose. I'm being useful. But you're not the first one. First one is Warden Farm. That's my buddy. He wants to go by Warden Farm. I'll leave it alone. Good job on getting the job you were seeking, Dan. And even more on getting fit. Yep. 65 pounds. Stay in touch, my friend. Yeah, no problem. You've also been very busy, my friend. Don't deny it. You've been extremely busy, because you're posting how busy you are. Brian McCranahan, 0311, 0311. Wow, Hawaii reference. I have no idea how the hell I stumbled across your channel, but how the hell are you, Blackwell? I'm here. I'm still here. In spite of a handful of deployments where the enemy had different thoughts and opinions, I'm still here. I'm just using this channel belligerently, selfishly, as a cheap form of therapy, as well as a small attempt to see if people want to have conversations, especially those that disagree. So, is what it is. Andra, here we go. See if we can get through this. Okay, got busy for a while there, but now I got more time, so I'm back. Mwahaha. Okay, topics. 1. Trump fighting fire with fire. I always thought that's why people voted for him. He became kind of like the eye of the hurricane shit-throwing tornado. But to me, that just means we had bad plumbing. Politics was severely backed up with a lot of crap. And then we let people just mess with the plumbing and kick it to make it work. And now the pipes have burst. The crap is all over the living room, and we're definitely going to have to cancel the vacation because we now have a ton more cleanup to do. I'm not saying that kicking the pipes doesn't feel good in the moment, but the repairs are also going to be a real kick where it hurts. I don't think he can actually fix anything, and channeling the voters' rage won't fix it either. We probably just need to call a plumber at this point and hope we don't have to move. That's keeping it very simplistic. Of course, I get why he has some appeal to people, but I predicted he would win in 2016. To mainly myself, haha, I was not really online then and was definitely not paying attention to politics. New parties? Just the idea of new parties seems impossible to me nowadays. They don't think they're public servants anymore. They just think they own the voters now. I think it stems from the identity politics stuff, or at the very least, it's interconnected with the identity politics. People identify with their political parties too much. It's allowed politicians too much power in the dynamic. I'm going to pause there. I think part of Trump's appeal is he's not really a Republican. He's not really a career-long politician. He brings a different aura, a different kind of vibe to things that a lot of people are like, finally. You know, and he does. He's bombastic. He's not polished. He's all these different things. And I think a lot of us are just sick and tired of the same old, you know, like, watch Ron DeSantis' campaign. As governor of Florida, I think he's phenomenal. Whoever ran his campaign was garbage. His language, his demeanor, it was garbage. And I don't think it was Ron DeSantis. I think it was some preconceived form of Ron DeSantis strictly for the campaign trail that just, it didn't work. It failed miserably. That being said, I see where you're going with this, and I don't disagree. So my whole thing is, I didn't get involved until much later in life, and I gotta be honest with you, no matter how it sounds, no matter what labels people want to throw at me, I think the biggest change was probably Barack Obama, because I think, to put it quite simply, to just, you know, make this as simple as possible, because of his outward appearance, because of his complexion basically made him untouchable. It became almost this unwritten rule that you cannot criticize him, you cannot talk poorly of him, you cannot make fun of him. He was untouchable. He was a water walker. Because to do otherwise was to basically invoke the ire of being called a racist. If he did something bad, if his policy was bad, if his character was bad, you couldn't say anything because of how he looked. And I think he and his party rode that into the sunset and made that the standard. They tried to make it the horse to ride in on Hillary. You can't fuck with her because she's a woman. Unfortunately, she's a white woman, and she's Hillary Clinton, wife of Bill Clinton. Therefore, I don't think she had enough going for her. But they're doing it with Kamala. They're trying to make this all about her immutable characteristics. Don't vote for her character. Vote for her gender. Vote for her complexion. Because those things are off limits. You can't touch them, and therefore you can't touch her. Because any attack towards her is a direct attack on her gender and her skin complexion. And you're right. I think they've made it identity politics. You know, it's to the point right now where the Democrats to me are like Shaggy. And the left-leaning news media is just like Shaggy. I saw you do it. Wasn't me. I'm watching you do it right now. It's not me. I mean, it's that song from Shaggy. Okay, social currency turning into actual currency, absolutely, perfectly well said. You can build a trusting, loving relationship with your kids and still be a parent. Saying yes to everything does not automatically make you better. I don't rewatch my videos, so I'm not really sure where those two tie in. Trans Olympics, absolutely. They can leave it open for other people if they want to join in. It can have more mixed sports with both men, women, and trans for whoever wants. But don't force it on people. Lots of things are unique and outside the norm and do just fine in terms of funding and engagement. But forcing it on people is a giant mistake. Thank you, we agree. Soy boys as dating standards, nope, I think most people hate this stuff. It's just hard to know what the values are anymore when you meet people. Like, it seemed that for a while we were mostly on the same page and now it's more fragmented. I've been saying that for years. That's all, but I was never into soy boys and no one else around me was either. And I was into art, and at some point I never went to an art school, but I was in the art circles for a while growing up. It just never came up before. It popped up all of a sudden online, and now everyone thinks online equals reality, and it does not. When I was in university, no one was even thinking in terms of soy boys, except the feminism class, a little bit, though it was more in terms of male allies. Even there, though, in my experience, it was the male professor pushing that stuff, and a lot of the primarily female students just kind of starting to buy into it. So to me, it always felt fake. It always mainly existed online and in very select circles. But most of the general values of the students leaned more towards, we need strong, capable men to keep the creeps in check. Not that we need men to be more like women. That's totally alien. It just burst out pseudo-academia like a literal alien monster. Nice reference there, I dig it. And yes, about 90% of women are exactly like me. Seriously, just ignore social media and you'll see. We just all triage. So if you're the type who pretends he is all strong and capable, but you're just doing it as a stupid game, you still lose. Those guys do exist. Tis is why we females like to get to know people in general rather than just go on blind faith. But that's it. Most of the female conversation revolved around figuring out which guys like them and how much. And nails and hair. The end. Mystery solved. Yes, this was pretty much everywhere. The only difference between the faculties was who had time to get drunk on the weekends and who was too busy of a hangover. There is a pecking order there. That may not be 100% of women. Roughly 5 to 10% are Colleen Hoover fans. But as Hollywood just learned, it is always a bad idea to try to follow the leadership of the toxic women, as much as it is for the toxic men. Their inner toxicity just ensures a very bad outcome. Just leave them to their weird corner of the internet universe and let's just move on. We can't fix crazy. That's okay. There's still 90% normality out there. Why can't we just focus on that for a change? I only worry about my son, who's 16 and seems interested in girls, but not interested in the girls that are around him because he just doesn't trust them. And I'm just belligerently happy that I'm married. I'm married a Gen Xer like myself, and we think and feel a lot the same on pretty much everything. Do not read Colleen Hoover. She is the female equivalent of brain cancer. I'm not saying you'll 100% catch it, but you will hate your life by the end of the first chapter and get all depressed about women and shit. She is the exception, not the rule, and is overwhelmingly hate-reviewed by most people who know how to read. She's just banking on the outrage. Just because a car wreck attracts a lot of attention does not mean it's valuable. At the height of her fame, this woman's book has 3 million reviews. In total, so does The Lightning Thief by Rick Jordan, which you have never ever heard of probably. It means nothing. Not unless that's the book that was directly referenced on Friends back in the day. Okay, Andra, continued. To be fair, it's possible that I just missed the whole social cultural revolution thing. Those conversations were kind of starting a bit here and there while I was on my way out, and I was mainly overworked and not sleeping enough throughout most of my university. There's a little bit my own fault because I had a tendency to pick the hardest subjects, but also the school administrator's job because they just expected the students to work themselves into a coma when I got in. By the time I got out, it was starting to flip and everyone was suddenly super into mental health. It was and still is all BS. They just found a way to commercialize the burnout. At the same time, I thought maybe there was going to be a positive change, but it became very clear later on it was 100% BS. All the administrative problems stayed. It's just now we had an option to go talk about the stress so they can do nothing about it. But say, they're there, you take it easy now, all 100% BS. That's part of the reason I'm not on board with the mental health craze, even though I sometimes touch on mental health topics. Ooh, excuse me. I now need to over-explain that. Yes, I'm talking about it, but no, I'm not part of the specific interest clique. That the total invasion of privacy which comes along with telling people to just publicly talk about their mental health struggles and the shameless commercialization of other people's pain, everyone else has not caught up yet, but eventually they will realize the same thing I did. It's nonsense. It's not about fixing anything. It's about generating a revenue stream and taking advantage of this trend. There's a reason things were meant to be confidential. Not everyone is okay hearing about your struggles, and you should not be forced to be okay via someone forcing an intimacy between yourself and everyone else. It is just fake and will leave you feeling worse than if you had shared nothing at all. You would not feel okay telling random strangers about your new cancer diagnosis. So why would you need to be okay with sharing your intimate details publicly? Wanting boundaries is normal. Having a different level of intimacy with some people versus others is normal. Telling a bunch of strangers intimate details about yourself is actually not normal and a hallmark of several mental health diagnoses. Everything you're seeing now with the mental health stuff online is just people jumping onto a silly bandwagon. I don't think the people jumping on are always ill-intentioned, but I am pretty sure the tech companies pushing them are very ill-intentioned. And as a society, we have mental health professionals because a lot of people really suck at dealing with mental health. It really is a skill set. It's different than a mechanic skill set, but you still need to learn it. Yes, I do suck at cars and mechanics. I will say that I love over-explaining if it's logical on topics I know nothing about. To use your example, I think men do sometimes need to over-explain the male experience in situations I know nothing about. For example, I do not get the prison gay stuff at all. I don't understand how anyone's tendencies, gay, straight, etc., can be environmentally changed. Like, they're straight outside but gay inside the prison. I don't get it on the female side either, to be honest, but it seems more like a famous odd thing for the guys. I used to think that they must be lying that they're straight outside the prison. I'm not even saying it to be mean or anything. I think lots of movies can make it funny. It was one of the favorite scenes in Reacher. I think they handled it well, but as a concept, I don't get it, and no amount of movies can help me either. I've seen it covered in media before, but I got nothing out of it. I get it's somehow hard to go without sex for a long time, but it's not so hard that you're suddenly change your orientation. Come on, sounds like BS to me. I can't remember what the hell you're referencing, but thank you for that. That was a lot of fun to read. I can tell you, now that my wife is back to work, I won't really say much other than she works a lot with EC. And what I've noticed since my wife has been working with EC kids for the last 8+ years, we've gotten to the point right now as a society where, in my personal opinion, and I'm not saying I'm right, I'm not saying I'm wrong, I'm just saying it's my personal opinion, something's wrong. We don't want to discipline our kids. We don't want our kids to not like us. We want to be our kids' friends. And I'm not saying me personally, but as a society. And we don't want to take responsibility for when we don't discipline our kids and our kids misbehave. So we're in such a hurry to get our kids diagnosed with something because for some reason it feels like it transfers the blame from us to the diagnosis. And at the same time, because our kid now has a diagnosis, our kid is special, and therefore we're also special because we're the parent of a special needs kid. When technically speaking, a lot of the stories I hear is these kids aren't special. They just need a good old-fashioned ass whooping because they've never been told no. They've been told how great they are, they've been told how special they are, and they haven't been told no, and they haven't grown up without consequences. They've never had any kind of fear of consequences. They just need their ass whooped. Now, I'm not talking about how you got to put on a theme song and you got to go to town like it's an MMA fight, you know, and you don't stop until the ref pulls you off. But I'm talking about how something has to be done where there is a legitimate and genuine fear of consequences. And all these people that studied and researched and all this nonsensical psychobabble, you know, I hate to say it, but I think, oh, what the hell's his name? Chris Kyle said it best. In spite of what your mama told you, sometimes violence does solve things. Maybe a good old-fashioned spanking, a good old-fashioned ass whooping, or the threat of violence is enough to change behaviors. But I'm kind of paraphrasing and oversimplifying things, but you get the gist. All right, typically I tend to think that men and women can both understand the other side if they try a bit. Not everyone is like that, though. There are people who think they're polar opposites destined to be in conflict forever, and the best we can hope for is a 50-50 representation. I just think they're disconnected from reality. It's almost never been exactly 50-50 in anything at all at any one time. And the world function okay, and not all men, women are the same. Some are great at being representatives and having their finger on the pulse of the people they're representing. Some are horrible at it. I think the less bias and more honesty we can insert into these conversations, the better off we will be in the long run. To kind of go back, I think Donald Trump may or may not have that honesty and admit to his bias and whatnot, and some people find that refreshing. Back to the main point, though, I only hate over-explaining when it's a collection of random terms and symbols I've never heard of, or when it's about a topic where they should not just assume they don't know. Like, if it's a super common topic and most people would know it, then I think they should ask first rather than just over-explain for the next 10 minutes. I usually try to interrupt if that happens, though. And I always try to ask people lots of questions whenever I am around mechanics. Most of them don't really like to answer or don't really have time, but I try my best. I have two parents which were engineers. It was never a lack of ability to learn, but I always hated the idea of doing exactly what my parents did. Laugh out loud. So I just really wanted to go into the opposite direction, which is how I ended up on the more sciencey medical side of the spectrum. Honestly, I'm usually curious about anything I don't already know, though. I could have gone into engineering, but I'd rather fix living things than non-living things, I guess. I think I'm just more attracted to them, stuff I care about less. Over the past few months, I have spent a lot of time talking to 3D engineers, though, and I can honestly say that I might be more mechanically inclined than some of them. I just still don't have the words for a lot of this stuff. I don't know the more mechanical terms to describe stuff, but it's okay. It's just another learning curve. I'll get better at it, and they'll have to be patient in the meantime because I'm paying them. That's also why I was asking about coding stuff. I need to work on that too, but really need someone who can do the literal coding part for me. It's not hard, it's just hard to connect with the right people. Speaking of which, did anyone answer? No! No, and it kind of pisses me off. These are people that are supposed to be friends or whatever the case may be, and it's been months. At least it feels like months, and nobody's gotten back to me. I've left messages, I've sent emails, nobody's gotten back to me. It's kind of rude. Granted, I will say this, they're dudes, and I don't know what it is about being a dude, but we can go months to almost years at a time without speaking and pick up like yesterday. But why we ghost each other, I don't know. Because, I mean, I've literally initiated conversations like, hey, get back to me, contact me, you know, communicate with me, and I've gotten nothing. Didn't mean to get all fired up, but I did put feelers out there. I did reach out. I did attempt, and I got nothing. So, yeah, I don't know. The whole 3D thing, it's really, really easy to research slicing than it is 3D modeling. And slicing is not super easy. It can be, and the software that they're developing is getting a lot easier so that it's user-friendly, so that it's almost plug and play. And modern 3D printing is slowly progressing to plug and play, where if you have the model, you have to do minimal amounts of work on the slicing. And slicing is such a weird name. All it means is you take a model as a file, you put it into the program, you tell the program what 3D printer you have, you tell the program what media you're using, so PLA or whatever, and then if you really, really want to, you can manipulate all these micro settings. But essentially, you take the model and you determine how thick you want it. Do you want it 100% filled in? Do you want it hollowed out? You know, I could go on and on and on, but that might be a separate video. Maybe I'll put it on my nerdier channel if you want to migrate over there, because I don't feel like it really makes sense on this channel. And what is your skill level? Like if I said I wanted to build a toy dog that moves around, for instance, could you do the coding part of that? If I broke it down into parts for you, the code would just need to keep track of one set of legs versus the other in this example. I understand coding, I understand the concept, much like there's concepts you probably understand. Physically doing it, not so much. Not to insult your intelligence, but what I learned in very, very, very basic coding, just enough to survive an 8-week course, is that every keystroke means something. Whether you hit shift, capitalize a letter, the number of spaces, special characters like a semicolon or whatnot, they all mean something. That's called scripting. Scripting is still a form of code, but it's giving computers an instruction. The original code was binary, zeros and ones, and how many zeros, how many ones, how many spaces, that performed a specific function. Scripting is supposed to be a lot easier, where you can physically type, but literally what you type manipulates a function. I understand enough to say that. How to do it, I don't know, because I couldn't tell you how many spaces represents this. You know, capital C versus lowercase c represents this. That's... what people fail to understand is that it's really hard to be an expert in everything all at once. I'm pretty good at my areas of expertise, but they're not everything. I can't be an engineering, biomedical, psychoanalytical coding ninja. They don't have a degree for that. Trust me, I tried. We could all technically be carpenters too, but we don't all want to. It's just one of those things I never liked. Andrew, what I would probably say is, if you're still surrounded by academia, like living near university, you may need to try networking applications to try to reach out and find people who are coders, who are looking to get involved in a ground-up project. So if you have the idea, you have the end result, but you need someone to help you get there, just protect yourself, because that's what Mark Zuckerberg did at Harvard. I mean, it's well documented. There were people just like you who had the idea, who had the end result, but needed help with the keystrokes. Mark Zuckerberg knew how to do the keystrokes, did exactly what they wanted him to do, saw the idea, knew that there was a better way, didn't tell them that there was a better way, didn't make any suggestions, so he took their idea, made it better, and now he's Mark Zuckerberg. So just protect yourself there. And before anyone makes fun of me, I never wanted to learn the feminism stuff either, FYI. It was 100% forced upon me. The class was called Social Sciences, and the feminism was not even in the freaking description. They just snuck it in there, and it almost gave me stress ulcers. I skipped a lot of that class. It was that bad. I really hated it on the visceral level. It was the intrinsic victimization and the complete lack of actual studies. The entire class was nothing but one egomaniac telling everyone anecdotes. I had never hated anecdotes more. I still hate the anecdote style of teaching, and it is so contrary to everything solid or tangible. Yeah, I would probably put that directly in the realm of the picture-perfect definition of indoctrination. Some things you just viscerally hate, you know? It was not the concept of feminism or social studies. It was the way it was being presented. I think the guy did his schooling at one of the more artsy-fartsy schools, because the style of teaching was horrendous. And I like art. I had art classes. Art is fine. It's just very different than the sciences. His style of teaching was the worst combination of those two subjects. It was not art or science. It was just a mess. Yeah, you know, when it comes to visceral hate, I really hate bigotry. And I know it may seem contrary to the way some people want to interpret me and purposely interpret me, but I really do hate bigotry, and I hate people who put precedence on immutable characteristics, because it's my belief that in accordance with Newton's third law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. If you put precedence on something, in order to do that, you have to devalue something somewhere else. So if you're proud of your skin complexion, that means you devalue somebody else's. That's action-reaction. That's just how I think. That's my personal opinion. You seem to want to talk, so in a completely different response, you seem to want to talk about your son. I tend to be overly cautious not to reopen wounds, so you don't have to. But if you want to, I'm happy to listen. Is there anything you did not get to say to him before he went? I think most people avoid these topics because they know it's going to make them really sad. Andra, thank you for asking. Maybe I'm being selfish. Maybe I'm kind of going into what you were talking about by overly sharing and whatnot. To try to make this short and simple, my son was not born with any mental deficiencies. He was not born with any kind of physical deficiencies either, other than his internal organs. The disease he and I both shared, known as Hirschsprung's disease, it affects the growth of ganglion nerves in the large intestine. My son had a very rare case where it affected his entire intestinal tract up to within 10 centimeters of the stomach lining. So he only had about 10 centimeters of good intestine. So he needed a small intestine transplant just to survive. Unfortunately, before we got to that point, because medicine is still a practice, some accidents happened, some mistakes were made, and he suffered a little bit of brain damage, which put him behind cognitively. So when he died at 7 years, 7 months, and 11 days old, he was probably somewhere between 3 and 4. So how much he could comprehend, how much he could understand, I don't know. Even then, if he would have been fully cognizant as a regular 7-year, 7-month, 11-day-old child, I don't know what I could have said to him other than what I said, which was I love him, that I was sorry, because I still feel to this day responsible for what happened. And I've only learned recently, as a result of 23andMe, Ancestry.com, that it's on my biological father's side, and that I directly inherited it from my biological father's side, and I'll try to end with some information on that. No one likes to think about the end, but that's okay. I was telling someone else on a different podcast that it's okay if it feels like you'll never be the same again. Sometimes things just change you and you can't go back. Yeah. So you just have to make the best of the new you. It helps if you think about it as a prolonged absence rather than not seeing him ever again. I think so, anyway. No one really knows what's on the other side, but the best we know is there is an after. So in any way, you will meet up again when you cross over, and so you need to just keep the memory alive and keep track of all the stories you would tell him when you reconnect. I like your disposition on that. I'm not a big fan of religion. I'm not a big fan of how religion is executed, but I appreciate and understand the value. We as humans want to believe that there's more than just this mortal coil, that when this life force, when this energy ceases to exist, we exist somewhere else. And maybe that's what gives us purpose, that we seek to live a good life so that after this life is over, we have something else to look forward to, so we're working towards that. I understand that notion. How it's been executed is what I probably don't agree with. I was lucky not to lose anyone young. All my past people were older or old. But my great-grandfather lost his youngest daughter when she was about 9 years old. It was an accident. She fell, bumped her head, and got a brain bleed and eventually passed. My grandmother barely remembered her, so I don't have stories about her, but that's how people would think about it. That you meet up after passing, kind of like a spiritual Thanksgiving. I guess with all your long-lost relatives and you get to catch up. Death is not really the end, just a transition of sorts. So you'd better have good stories to tell when you get to the reunion and make everyone proud. You might meet relatives you never actually got to meet before too. Whatever animates us, it definitely passes onwards, even if the physical side decays. The biology always decays, but energy does not. It morphs, changes, but is always there. I don't know if that will help, but I always like the notion, and there is far more proof of this being true than any other version of reality. Just because people don't know him now don't mean he vanished. People don't know lots of things. A lot of them are kind of idiots anyway. I don't know if you noticed, but they kind of are. All those things still exist even if they don't know about them. I can't tell you how death works specifically, but I can say that you can't go wrong by honoring the best in those that passed and letting them see the best in you too while you're still here, and then you'll have lots of fun stories to tell. Living that way seems like the best way to ensure that the spiritual thread between you stays strong. These things are always odd to explain. The expectations always seem like not enough or silly, but I hope some of this helps. Andra, what I can say is, when you become a parent, the traditional expectation is that your kids will outlive you and that you will hopefully have grandchildren. You'll see your children grow to adult, get married, have kids, all the different things, right? The expectation is not that you say goodbye to your kids, but your kids say goodbye to you. Like, that's the natural order of things. And that's why I always phrase it that losing a child is an extraordinary event you would normally think is reserved for extraordinary people, and I don't find myself extraordinary. Maybe by putting myself on YouTube makes me a bit extraordinary, but I don't know. Andra, continued. I don't think you need billionaires to fund a third party. I think you need to have a popular platform, and then you can use grassroots funding. This whole trend with courting the silver spoon babies is a bad one, and it is very popular in military circles. Online, I don't pretend to understand why. All those people are very widely disliked, usually for treating their employees like dog poo-poo. So their involvement would pretty much guarantee that whatever party they help fund would be massively unpopular. Why does everyone think you need them? Everyone being pretty much every popular military veteran podcaster. Also, 9 out of 10 times the billionaires are against popular politics of any kind, usually because they want to retain the right to abuse their employees all the times, or just replace them with robots. Is there a rule that we must self-sabotage at all times? And by we, I mean that in a we the people, aka the average citizen, who have a right to vote and by extension a right to ask for better working conditions and living standards. Remember that, decent living conditions, because I do. It was a nice dream. I'm not, Andra, I apologize, I'm not tracking the tie-in. Excuse me. I'm not tracking the tie-in with political parties and veterans, although you're not entirely wrong. Most veterans do seem to identify more on the right, but I feel like most veterans that are popularized today tend to be combat veterans, usually within the Snake Eater Special Operations community. And maybe that's why they're popular, because they have the validity of being special operators. I don't. And maybe that's why I'm also not that popular, which I enjoy immensely not being that popular. But it goes back to, like I said, I'm not overly in love with the Republican Party, but if my only choice is one of those two parties, I find that I'm more agreeable with the Republicans than I am Democrats. But I'd like to see more neutral parties that, you know, if there's anything positive on the Democratic side of the House, pull from that. If there's anything positive from the Republican side of the House, pull from that. And all the negatives, push those away. You know, like purple parties. But I don't know. I mean, if you look at the legacy of our country, we didn't start out Democrat and Republican. Democrat and Republican was a direct result of the Civil War. And the country wasn't even that old by the time of the Civil War. We're older than what the country was back then, which means we've had the Democrat and Republican parties longer than we had any other parties. And it's not that I can't do the math and figure it out. It just kind of baffles me. I apologize. I need these to read, to read what I'm clicking on. So, with that being said, what did I want to talk about real quick? Boo-boo, hang on a second. I'm having a brain fart. I can't remember. We were talking about something. I think it had to do with my son. And I was moving on. And I was reading what you were talking about. What are you... whatever I was going to talk about, I forgot. Which is life. Oh well. So with that, I'm going to close. Andra, thanks for the comments. McCranahan, good hearing from you. Good to know you're still alive. Feel free to comment. Anybody else want to comment? You see what I do. I read, react, and respond. Warden, we should see each other soon. Especially your son. Got to talk to him too. With that being said, I just offer this as an opportunity to talk, as an opportunity for people who may or may not agree or disagree to talk. I prefer to be civil. Sometimes it's not always civil. To me, this is about the closest I can get to not hiding behind a keyboard and not being one of those keyboard warriors like Mike Tyson says, people who are a little too brave without getting punched in the face. So, I'm just trying to, increase communication. Ironically, I did actually make a legit friend. We're now friends on Facebook. We talk. We disagree, but we talk. Right now, I think the biggest thing I'm noticing that I disagree with is I feel as though the Democratic Party is running on a platform of dark-skinned female. Nothing else. No policies, no nothing, just, vote for the dark-skinned female because she is a dark-skinned female. And I feel like, are we really doing this? I mean, like, shouldn't we be voting for something more? Like, what does she represent? What will she do? And I hate to say it, but it's kind of like all these memes and all these jokes, you've had 3.5 years or more to fix something, but you also broke it. So why are we supposed to give you 4 years to fix something you broke? I don't understand. It's like Android, to use your reference. If I took it to a mechanic and the mechanic broke my car, why am I going to pay him more to fix what he broke? Theoretically, I should take my car somewhere else and have that mechanic pay for the repairs that he broke. But I digress. It's a free country. It's a free platform. You want to get on here and leave a comment and partake in the conversation, I appreciate it. And as you see, I will read, react, and respond. Until then, everybody, try to stay safe out there and, be you, let others be them, and don't tell anybody how to live. If you leave a comment, you're awesome. Until next time.